So now that we have most of our components ready to use, let's start working with our controllers. We're going to start with the parent controller class, the abstract one, which all of the controllers extend. And let's just scroll down. We have 3 properties at the moment, but I've forgotten to add this request property, which we are here instantiating, obviously, by pulling the request from within the container. So let's add this property as well. Protected request. And it's an instance of the request, this Illuminate HTTP one. Let's make sure that obviously this is also imported. Let's just put all these Illuminate components together this way. And if we scroll down, the next one we need is going to be the one for a validator, so protected validator. And it's going to be an instance of the validator, this app utilities validator. And again, this should add the namespace. Let's just, import the class here. Let's just move it down here. Okay, after the validator, we are gonna go for protected input. And that's simply going to be a collection, which is this Illuminate support collection. And again, let's just make sure that they are all together here. After the inputs, we will have the rules, protected rules, which is going to be a simple array. And then the last one is going to be also array, and it will store all of the errors. So protected errors and array. And there we go. So that's all of the properties. Now if we scroll down, we have constructor, which we can add to, and then it's going to be included within the main constructor. And then we have the view method. After the view method, we are going to create the method that will authorize, basically restrict access to a given sections of our website. And we're going to call it authorize. Protected function authorize. And within this method, I'm going to check if this guard is authenticated, then we return null. That means obviously we are happy to allow whoever's viewing the page to go to the page basically and access the content. Otherwise, we are going to return new redirect response, this Illuminate HTTP redirect response. We are going to pass the path to our login page, which is going to be, in my case, is going to be just / because it's directly under the after the domain. And then a method send. This is going to redirect the user to this location. So obviously in our case, if I open the page, we have login.dev, and that's where the user is going to be redirected if they try to access the page that has this method in the method of the controller for this given location. Okay, let's add some doc blocks here. That returns this response. Let's just import this class. And again, make sure that that thing is Symfony ones. Let's put them under the Illuminate now ones as well. And this redirect response we can have here. There we go. Okay, if we scroll down, let's add the summary to this one. Authorize request. So after authorize method, we're going to create one for redirecting the user if it's already logged in. So if, let's say, someone logged in and tried to access login page, they shouldn't see the login page. They should be redirected back to the page that's after the login. So we're going to call it redirect if logged in. And again, it's going to be protected method because we only need to access this method from within the controllers that extend this class. So protected function redirect if logged in. And within this method, and again, I'm going to shift it up a little bit. Within this method, we are going to check if exclamation mark this time, this guard is authenticated. If it's not authenticated, then return null. Now this time we're working this way because obviously if the user is not authenticated, they should be able to access pages like login or registration. Otherwise, we return the same thing as before, new redirect response. And this time we're going to redirect them to the dashboard, which is going to be the default page after the login, and then send method to trigger this redirect. And let's add doc blocks as well. It's going to return this response or null, and then direct if user is logged in. Direct if, there we go. So the next method is going to check whether the method used for a given request is of a post type. So protected function is post, and we're going to check, basically return boolean true or false, this request method, and we triple equal symbol check for the capital post. So basically when you submit the form, you can submit it with get or post, and we're checking if the post has been used, basically the method post. Okay, the doc blocks, it will return boolean true or false, and we go for check if request method is post. And after this method, the next one is going to restrict any other request than post. So it will only allow the post request, otherwise it's going to throw an exception. So protected function post request only. And then we check if is not this post, the method that we created just a moment ago, then we throw new but request HTTP exception, and then invalid request method and exclamation mark. There we go. Okay, let's add some doc blocks here as well. Only allow post request method. And if we scroll up just to show you this, but request HTTP exception is part of the Symfony package. So obviously make sure that you also import it right here. So it's Symfony component, HTTP kernel exception, but request HTTP exception. You can use just a standard exception, the one that comes with PHP, just a normal one, if you prefer to. Okay, so after this method, and let's just add return void on throws but request HTTP exception. Next method is going to collect the request, basically get the request and put it into a collection instance. So protected function collect request, and we take an argument of items as an array. We need to know what items we want to fetch, and then we go for this input equals new collection, Illuminate support collection, and then we pass through as an argument this request. We only want the following items, and we pass the items through as an argument. And I think here we should actually remove this default value, because if we are requesting some items, then we should perhaps always have some items in this array. So no default value for this one. Okay, and let's add some doc blocks. We're going to say collect request items, so that this input is now an instance of the collection with all these items collected from the request. So the next method will take care of validating the request. It's going to be called validate request. Protected function again, validate request. And we are going to start with validator equals new validator, this app utilities validator, which we've created earlier. And this one takes two collections, as you may remember. The first one is going to be rules, and the second one is going to be input. The rules at the moment are just a simple array, so we need to convert these rules to a collection. That's very simple. Obviously, we start with new collection, make sure there's this Illuminate support collection, and we pass these rules as arguments to it. So this rules. And the next one we already have as collection, because that's where this collection request is going to convert the request into this collection instance, which is basically this input, basically input property of this class. So now our validator is instantiated. Now we're going to check if, and then exclamation mark, this validator is valid, which would say, in other words, if this request is not valid, because we're using this exclamation mark at the beginning, then what we want to do is associate whatever errors we have with this errors property. So errors equals, and we're going to merge because we might have added some errors already to this errors array, this property which we have on this controller. So we're going to merge it. So array merge, and we're going to pass this errors first, and then we're going to merge it with this validator errors. So if we want to add any errors as we go as well outside of the validator, we can also add them to this array, and they all going to be merged. Okay, so that's our validate request. Let's now quickly add some doc blocks as well. Validate request, and it returns void. So return void. There's no value returned from this method. Now the last method is basically going to add item to this errors array. So we can actually, as I said earlier, we can manually add some items as well. Protected function add error. And this method takes two arguments, the key, which is the name of the field, and then the rule, which causes the problem here. So we're going to check first if array key exists, and we go for the key within this errors, and in array rule within this errors with this key, then that means that we already have this rule for this field within this errors array, so we don't have to add it, at which point we simply hit return, and that's it. That this basically method will terminate here. Otherwise we are going to add it. So this errors, and we pass the key, the field name in other words, and then we add another set of brackets to indicate that it's one of the items in this array, and then we pass the rule. So for instance, what we could have here is something like this: email, which felt for required, but also for email field, for instance. So that's why we're checking if this rule is already in this errors array, in this errors with the email array, within this array basically, before we actually add it. Okay, so that's our add error method completed. Let's just quickly add doc blocks as well. There we go. For the key, it's going to be of a string type. Same for the rule, it's also going to be a string. And then let's add some summary here. So add item to errors. And that's everything within our main controller class. So we can move to the next video and start working with our logging controller.